Hi, I'm Surili.
Hi, I'm Seema.
Today, we're excited to have with us the one and only Nse Witherspoon. Nse is the Executive Director for the Children's Environmental Health Network, where her responsibilities include successfully organizing, leading, and managing policy, education and training, and science-related programs. For the last 21 years, she has fearlessly served as a key spokesperson for children's vulnerabilities and the need for their protection, conducting presentations and lectures across the country. Welcome, Nse.
Thank you. Hello, Seema and Surili. It's such an honor to be here with you all today.
We are so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. We're especially excited as we are celebrating Children's Environmental Health Day. Can you tell us a little bit about what CEHN Day is and how we can get involved?
Thank you. We are so excited. Every second Thursday of October, which is Child Health Month, for the last 6 years, this is the 6th anniversary of Children's Environmental Health Day, which the Children's Environmental Health Network launched. And it's a day of action for and with children, youth. It's a day to celebrate successes over the last year and beyond, and an opportunity to be true and assess ourselves, our organizations, our individual actions. There's always ways to do more. How do we lean on examples, other best practices, if you will, ways that other folks around the country are standing up for children? And, we're keeping track of events. So everything counts. You have a meeting with your PTA about, how to navigate COVID in your school while also maintaining a healthy school environment. Are you meeting with a key legislator or sending in a letter on any related issues? Are you organizing an actual physical hike maybe? All of that counts, and we're keeping track of all of those. And we know that other people go in across the country and get motivated either for this year or the next year or throughout the year. So we encourage anyone to go online, and it's just cehday.org as the specific event site. Also, you can share your champion story and download all kinds of resources and toolkits, ways that you can, connect with your key legislator about any children's environmental health issue on your mind, any of the tools and resources that we have that you can link to, and any other way that we can provide technical assistance. We collect proclamations, Children's Environmental Health Day proclamations from governors and mayors across the country. So please, again, go on to that site. If you have an ability to just use our letter template, it probably would take you 5 minutes. And it could be an amazing tool throughout the year to lean on as many of us are out there advocating for the health and well-being of kids. And then this year, we also have a whole week of events. So October 14th is the actual Children's Environmental Health Day with a variety of virtual programming and entertainment and even book reading and an excitement for families and children. But also Monday, October 11th is going to be Mindful Monday. So there's going to be some kids yoga. Think Outside for Children's Environmental Health Day is there's going to be a film screening on October 12th, and getting kids out in nature and what the benefit is for children and families to do that. There's going to be a environmental health equity and children's chat on Twitter on October 13th with West Harlem Environmental Action. And then finally wrapping up the week on Friday, October 15th, there's going to be a Children's Environmental Health read and sing along. So lots of different ways to get engaged and involved. So many new attributes even this year. And I'm so excited to hopefully have all of you participate and join us in one way or another.
I love that so much. And I remember coming to the inaugural Children's Environmental Health Day event 6 years ago. Wow. And thinking, I feel like I'm part of something huge at the beginning. And I'm so happy from the bottom of my heart to see how far you've progressed in just 6 years, because the stage to amplify these issues is so important. So speaking of which, can you share with us why should children as a population be addressed in the climate solutions that we're talking about these days? And why should we as a society care? Obviously, we as mothers care, but as a whole, why should we care?
No, it's really, you've been a fantastic friend and partner and in general. And yes, I remember that inaugural day also well, and your continued support. So thank you for that. So why we're even here, and why, unfortunately, there's even a need to have a day, to distinguish and make sure we call out that children still need to be protected. Children are, I think, our most vulnerable population due to their age. They don't have, if you will, political savvy, connections. They don't have a whole pocket of money, to be influencers. Obviously, adolescents and college age kids and high school kids and even middle school kids are rocking and moving. But I'm talking our even youngest, our most vulnerable here, who have to rely on us as adults to be responsible stewards for their health and well-being and how they're navigating at least the earlier part of life. And that even starts with, reproductive. We know that the mom's womb is the first environment for a child. And sadly, we do know that children are being born pre-polluted. So that's already setting in a very interesting journey for children, especially those children living in certain zip codes and dealing with a cumulative set of impacts of health disparities on any given day. So children have, growing systems, their neurological systems, their muscular systems, their respiratory systems. They're all actually still developing even after birth. And I think sometimes we definitely society forgets that. It's almost like the baby's here and we can kind of move on. So any type of contact, environmental health related chemicals, biological agents that children come in contact with, that in many cases, especially when it comes to harmful chemicals, were never meant to really even introduce themselves into the human body, make life extremely challenging for that young child, maybe even so compared to adults exposed to the same exposures. So again, their behaviors too. So children are usually on the I have 4. One is in college all the way down to a kindergartner now, and just watching them develop. And I know you all are mothers as well. We want kids to be exploring and learning and working on their cognitive development. That's part of, the life cycle. They also put their hands in their mouth, but all of that places them also in harm's risk, right? What they're picking up on their little fingers and ingesting and or inhaling, if it's the case like lead dust, for example. So it's the compounding life effects. Most of us, our systems, as adults, our systems are developed. Yes, there are things that certainly we can come in contact with, like carcinogens that can increase our likelihood for, cancer diagnosis and other lifelong illnesses. But children have a longevity of lifespan in theory, and it gives, unfortunately, the incubation period for any harmful chemicals to just do some really nasty things in their little bodies. When it comes to climate change, I say often, Surili knows that I think climate change is the biggest children's environmental health issue of our time. You cannot really separate one from the other. The impacts from climate change only further exacerbate the implications, in particular, the negative implications that children are facing when it comes to environmental hazards. So we're living among the first generations that most likely are not going to be healthier than the generations before them, their parents and their grandparents. That's eye-opening enough. If you're an asthmatic, for example, and with increased wildfires and increased air pollution, you're going to have exacerbation of your asthma. We also know onset of childhood asthma is also increasing due to environmental exposures and traffic pollutions, for example. We know that the rising heat index has negative implications for pregnant women and children. So women are, giving birth to children with birth defects due to their exposures to heat index, and of course all kinds of scientific evidence that children are having trouble focusing in on school and other health implications just alone to the rising heat index. And in many cases, especially in lower wealth communities, the inability to just go into a air conditioning space and to cool off. I mean, a lot of times that reprieve is not even available. So we need to always be thinking about the needs of our vulnerable, especially the most vulnerable within that population, our children of color, again, children living in zip codes that are fence line communities, overburdened with a variety of environmental injustices for sure. And in the case of children, again, relying on us to pull together the protective standards and the political will that we need to truly protect them on any given day, not just now, but into the future. And climate change provides daily reminders that it is not only happening, but that we are in need of transformational action. Because if we don't do it now, and for the children of today, I really don't know what other time will be available to us to do this and to change the course for future generations to come.
Well, so much to unpack there. There were a few key sayings that really just hit me, not only as somebody who works in climate, but as you mentioned, as a mother as well. And, I often think about the future, and I deal with what many call eco-anxiety, thinking about my children's future. I'd love, and as an adult, that can be challenging to process because some of these issues are just so beyond any one person. But I'd love to get an understanding from you on how eco-anxiety might be impacting children and youth, and what you may have observed as it relates to their mental wellness and climate.
Yeah, thank you so much, Seema. It was I mean, the COVID pandemic is nothing that any of us wanted by any means. We're still living through it. And yet there have been some silver linings if we just take stock and take, heed of some lessons that are right before us. In our case of children's environmental health and even climate change and the, ability to spend more time with our families more than we might have. It was very aware. I became very aware in talking to my children that they certainly have climate anxiety. They might try to mask it a bit, but even especially my oldest now at his first year in college, he's angry. And he goes through these cycles for sure. And I'm like, wow, he's only 18. And he's already feeling the burden. His 15-year-old sister, same thing. And the type of discussions that they're having within their circles, that's encouraging, but at the same time, it's very alarming and sad as a parent that they should even have to worry about, among all these other realities in life, what even the next 5 to 10 years is going to look like for their future. So I just wanted to acknowledge that personal connection as well. We're definitely seeing both direct and indirect climate change impacts that are impacting current and, again, down the road psychological well-being of current and future generations. And there's just no other way to say that. We are seeing increase in a child's risk of having depression, anxiety, phobias, sleep disorders, attachment disorders, substance abuse, post-traumatic stress disorder. And a result of living through increased intense natural disasters, 100-year storms we're hearing are happening on an annual basis now. Migrations, climate migration is definitely happening within the US and beyond for sure. Loss of loved ones, or watching the loss of a loved one, right? Depending on how traumatic some of these situations are. And then even the disruption of the daily lives and activities and related negative health outcomes to all the above. If the roof of your school was ripped off due to a terrible hurricane, and you're not able to physically go to your school, we've all seen what that looks like in an unexpected fashion. Well, communities have been kind of doing this for a while with these storms ripping through or flooding, wildfires, any of these cases. Life must go on, but it is totally disrupted. And so while parents are trying to get economically together, their mental health and stress together, the stress that it puts on a family unit, how are you still working if you're able to work, all of those ramifications children are seeing and absorbing for sure, just like the adults around them. This can turn and lead into problems, any of these initial problems with emotional regulation, cognitive learning, again, their ability to focus, behavior issues, challenges, language development, and of course their academic performance, just to name a few. And at times, family units are in constant stress cycles. So sadly, this might be the norm. It may not be the abnormal. So together, these create predispositions to adverse adult mental and health outcomes. So children, such as my own, again, are exhibiting high levels of these anxieties and concern over climate change. And then there's another segment of the population that are not just children, that are adults that are feeling that this is so overwhelming that they kind of throw up their hands because they are not really sure still yet, even with so many, I think, opportunities to plug in, how they even begin to do that. So I think there's still a lot of work there. Children in the developing world, for example, do suffer the worst currently, as well as children living, again, in low wealth, communities of color already. These overburning impacts and these cumulative impacts are so real. And we do know that, lower income communities are, again, not as economically able to just get up and move, even with warnings and advance notice. So there are many ripple effects to the implications of climate change that are unfortunately playing out in our children. And we need to have focused coping mechanisms and understanding and focused attention and capacity within our public health infrastructure to get real about those realities that are displaying themselves.
Thank you for that really well thought out connection between how climate impacts us downstream in terms of the mental health impacts and mental well-being around anxiety, depression, and more, and the connection to the upstream impacts of poverty and wealth and generational wealth. Recently, you were published in the Journal of Applied Research on Children. Your article, and we'll link to it, is called Children's Environmental Health Disparities at the Intersection of Poverty and Child Health. So I was wondering if you can dive a little bit more into what it looks like downstream, and how does the cycle of climate change challenges for children as a climate sensitive population be exacerbated by the constant stress of poverty and lack of wealth?
Yeah, thank you. These are definitely not new issues, which we all know. They're just continuing to bubble up to the point where the urgency, I can't think of any more levels of urgency. I mean, I guess we can, but the time is so past due for us to get serious and put the type of momentum and capacity into all communities, but especially those communities that have been screaming for a long time in SOS, that we need some serious help. So that's everything from the major routes of contributors to our climate crisis. There's a lot of different layers of solutions out there, but I think we all understand that poverty and injustice on many levels is going to continue to be the elephant in the room if we don't make those lenses our priority, those communities, those experiences our priority. All too often, many communities do get what they need. They get the resources they need, and say they're going through a major 100-year storm, and then, rebuilding takes a while, but they're getting on their feet. And then there are other parts of our country, like parts of Louisiana is still struggling, after Katrina, how many years later, and then to get more and more storms on top of that, just as one example. There are many layers psychologically into why that is the case, right? We see this even in the dynamics of a city itself, where one side of the tracks, if you will, is constantly available, has the capacity, has the resources, or the school systems, or what have you. And just a couple miles away, it's such a stark difference. It's not okay that certain zip codes have been allowed to be polluted, for so long, air, water, you name it. There's still parts of our country that are not able in the US to turn on their water and have some at least balanced access to clean, accessible, safe water. There are still, and that's before, the major lead pipe crisis that have emerged since Flint, Michigan, and New Jersey, and on and on. So I are off, but I'm trying to make the connection that these are all connected. Climate change just further exacerbates the air pollution, our carbon dependency, our fossil fuel dependency. So we have to get serious about why we are continuing to be in this vicious cycle. We call it the health disparities. We want to break the cycle of health disparities, is what we talk about in that article. And there is a template program running for 16 years now. Dr. Leslie Rubin also co-authored that article with me. It's, I think, a very successful program, and one of many solutions out there, where you're building education and awareness among our student population and encouraging them to think outside the box and pull together projects that can be beneficial to communities that they're serving and or living in through a mentorship experience. And then they're, of course, coming together, sharing what they've learned, they publish together. And of course, that's a wonderful stepping stone for them in their workforce development. But more importantly, the lessons learned in the project they're working on, the innovation comes back to all of us to be able to look at ourselves and think about how we can model. We know what we need to be doing, and it's not, I guess it hasn't been so easy because it's economically driven, but we have to completely reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. And we have to get serious about that. And the reality is, if you look at the markets, sustainable focused marketed programs are actually skyrocketing right now, at my words. And so it's only about time where that tipping point will happen. It's already happening, right? But why are we waiting for the economic drivers to do that, those businesses to do that? We, the public, have many examples in our history where our political will, our savviness together, our numbers together, parents, mothers, grandparents coming together saying, we will not stand for this. We demand better for ourselves and our children, especially those highest risk communities. It's not okay. It's a total injustice. And I believe our children see these injustices and expect more of all of us. I hope I even got to the question.
Beautifully.
Absolutely. And, along the path, it was nice to hear about how you're inspiring and engaging children and our future generations to be engaged in this work. But I'd actually like to take a second and look the other way in terms of you as a leader, what your journey has been like. What has it been on a personal level in terms of bringing you here? What inspires you to do this work, and maybe what's next?
Thank you. I feel like the journey is still happening, and I'm very honored that I had the chance. My board allowed me the, beauty and gift of a sabbatical this summer. So I'm coming out of a time where I really had some serious self-reflection and appreciation, and then hopefully recommitments, to the work that I'm very much passionate about. I actually started off middle school, high school, very determined to be a pediatrician. And so everything I was doing was related to becoming the best pediatrician I could. I had my mentor. I did everything everyone said. I, got my grades and all of this, went to a pre-med program for undergrad. And then very late in the game, Surili and I have had this conversation, junior year, in fact, I started just realizing I was miserable. And I'm sure I could have continued on. I hope I would have been, a fine doctor and helped out families, especially young children. But I started asking, is this the only path for using a science degree? And is there not a way? I was describing public health, but didn't even know about it yet at that point. This was only late 90s, by the way, not too long ago. Clearly public health was around, but it wasn't part of my circles. I was just very much on the traditional medical track. And my advisor looked at me like a deer in headlights. He was not prepared for that. No one talked about public health. So I kind of stumbled into the field of public health with a good friend of mine who was having the same eureka moment from Brown University. And she ended up going to Emory. I ended up going to GW School of Public Health. And that landed me in the DC area around 98. And it really was like a perfect fit. I was worried. I wasn't sure how this was going to go. I took my first environmental health course at GW. Dr. John Belvis, I joke about with him all the time that he was my first professor, my first introduction. So when I started at the Children's Environmental Health Network, it was my first job out of grad school. And I was doing communication outreach work. Like most of us, you probably think you're going to get your feet wet and then probably move on. And 21 years later, here I am. And a big part of that has been constantly having the ability to be flexible, to feel that I'm valued, my skill sets are valued, but I get so much more, I think, from the people, the amazing people we're working with. Everyone could be doing many other things, probably getting paid 3 times the amount, but there's a genuine passion here among our advocate community out here that we can and need to do better. And how do we lift up each other in doing that? So that alone is a huge driving force for me, and a big part of why I've stayed put and I've been able to, kind of grow, I guess, in the various positions as I've been there. But I mean, at the end of the day, our founding director always says it's unfortunate that there's even a need for an organization that has to focus on children's environmental health in the year 2021. We'll be 30 years old next year. But here we are. If the need is here, I want to be a part of, even in the smallest ways possible, driving solutions and being a resource and hopefully an inspiration for communities, instead of finding communities constantly finding roadblocks and feeling as though they're stifled and not able to find a way out of their current circumstances.
Well, you're certainly an inspiration to us. I think what you've shared in terms of your career is not atypical for those getting in public health. And I'm glad you're here to share, even though I'm sad to know that there's a need to advocate for children's environmental health. But if somebody were to do it, I'm so glad you're leading. I appreciate you so much, Nse, for taking time to share with us about the work that you do, Children's Environmental Health Week, and all the activities and energy you're bringing. And thank you to the listeners. Follow us on social media. We'll certainly post a lot of the resources Nse talked about, and tell us what inspires you. We'd love to talk more with you and with the people that inspire you, and hope to continue this dialogue.
We'd love to hear from you. Leave us a message. Tell us what you want to hear about. And until next time, let's make some noise for climate. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.